Hey everyone, welcome to the E2 Effective Elders podcast. Visit us at e2elders.org and please share this good word with others.
Hey friends, welcome back to our E2 Effective Elders podcast, and our thanks to CDF Capital for making this possible. We are so grateful that you are joining us while we are walking in Israel. And today we are enjoying a sunrise on the Sea of Galilee. 2022, we've been bringing a word or two that brings encouragement and builds people up. The whole year has been called a good word. And this month of November, it's the word humility. And humility is a powerful word, particularly when you and I move into humility. We've talked about how humility halts, it slows us down, and we admit that we need God. We cannot do everything in our own strength. We've talked about how humility helps when we see the needs of other people around us and we do something to truly be the hands and feet of Jesus. Now, how about this as a thought? Here along the Sea of Galilee, somewhere, Jesus spoke his Sermon on the Mount. We read in Matthew chapter 5 in those opening verses that Jesus, he went up onto the hillside, he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. And then we read many different pieces of wisdom and wise counsel of Jesus. At the end of his sermon, chapter 7, in verse 24, Jesus says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rains came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. Whoever hears these words and does not put them into practice is like the foolish man who built his house on sand. The rains came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." If we're going to hear the words of Jesus, we have to humble ourselves and become teachable. Not far from here in this Galilee region is Mount Tabor. And Mount Tabor is the freestanding mount that Jesus is said to have climbed with James, Peter, and John, his inner circle. You and I know it as the Mount of Transfiguration. And there on the top of that Mount Tabor, it was that Jesus not only was transfigured there with Moses and Elijah, but James, Peter, and John had a very teachable moment when they heard the voice of God declaring, "This is my son, listen to him." Question, were they teachable? Question, are you and I teachable? They come down from Mount Tabor, and there they encountered the 9 other disciples who failed at healing a boy. Jesus heals the boy, they go into a house, and then it says in Mark chapter 9, it says in verse 28 and 29, when they had gone indoors, the disciples asked Jesus privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" And Jesus replied, "This kind can come out only by prayer." He inferred that they failed in ministry because they failed to pray. But here's the kicker. His disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out? Why did we fail in ministry?" You see, they were teachable in spirit. And why were they teachable in spirit? Because they were humble in heart in that moment. Humility enables us to hear. So if you and I are going to be teachable in spirit, we must be humble in heart. Humility, like that of Jesus, will enable us to hear the words of Jesus. Humility hears.